Hello, welcome to another Ringside Fracas. My name is Lewis. I've got two of our regulars. We've got Dapo and Samson. How you doing, gents?
Not bad,
Well,
not bad.
well,
Hey,
thank you.
Self.
Dapo, man, what's all this Hugh Hefner
Listen, I was gonna
dressing gown? What's
apologize.
all
I was
this
gonna
about?
apologize for the drip, but
For the drip, is that what you call it? Drip, is it?
I'm chilling tonight. You know,
Wow.
Friday night.
Man's got his Friday night.
You know,
Yeah,
with the
I
missus
see him
and
doing
that.
this with the dressing gown, like, you know.
He's got the fireplace on as well. There's plenty of few hubbies up there. He goes somewhere.
And he's got
chilled one in.
He's got some models off of camera. I know he has. And we got a very special guest with us today. We've got Chris Andre. How you doing, man?
Thanks for having me, boys. Nice.
Hey, listen, it's a pleasure. We all love your YouTube videos. I'll put a link in the bio for where people can find your YouTube page. I'm sure loads of people who listen to this probably already follow you anyway, but you know, just in case. But yeah, how are you, Chris?
Yeah, not bad, thank you. Not bad. Can't complain. How about you guys? Everyone all right? Everyone excited about the weekend's boxing?
Oh,
Friday night.
can't wait to tuck in.
It's a great box to go, so yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to start, right? Because I find myself in a bit of because I don't know too much about Glowacki, right? And Okolie to me is always someone who's kind of flattered to deceive a little bit, and you know, I'm not quite sure how good he is. I don't know if that's I don't know if that's a general boxing thing or if that's just me, but me personally, like whenever I've seen, I'm still not quite sure of the level. And I think, you know, Eddie Hearn's tried to sell this fight as a bit of a 50-50. But the betting odds don't reflect it. I think Okolie comes in as quite a strong favorite, whether that means anything or not, going into this fight. But Sam, so I'll start with you. How big of a challenge is this for Okolie?
So I've been pretty critical of Okolie over the past, to be honest with you, and I've always, to be honest, it kind of falls down to his style of fighting, which always kind of made me think, nah, not my cup of tea, and I don't really quite appreciate what you're doing here. I've always hit, even when he got to that British level, I was like, he's overachieved to me, because I never thought it would be good enough to get to the world stage, but here he is. So kudos to him, and I think it's a bit of an enigma where you get, well, I've got to say at this point, you know what, got to put my hands up to you. You managed to get through fights I didn't think you would get through, even just the Chamberlain fight, I didn't think you could get through that. So I'm going to back you. I hope after our last performance, you're showing the improvements you've shown, and that carries through to this. I can't remember the guy's name. I don't.
Jazewski, I think.
Yeah. And hope that you just put in a good performance, and it's another win for the British, and that's as far as it goes for me. To be honest with you.
Yeah. What about you, Chris? How are you seeing this fight mapping out?
I'll be honest with you. It depends. When you're talking about Lawrence Okolie, if you're talking about him as a entertainer, I can understand why a lot of fight fans aren't, you know, massive on him. But as an obstacle to overcome, if you're fighting him, I think he's a nightmare. Because he's big. He maintains his range very, very well. He makes it hard for you, kind of like Vladimir Klitschko would make it hard for you to earn your way in. And then when you earn your way in, he's more than happy to tie you up and stop you working. So it's a constant nightmare. But although Vladimir was better than Okolie at range, many more skills, on the inside, Vladimir's defense was holding, whereas Okolie is fantastic up close. The way he uses a forearm across the jaw for head control, the way he will trap your wrist or your bicep to stop you being able to get shots off on the inside. It's like fighting an octopus. He is very, very good on the inside. The thing is, though, it's a massive step up against a guy like Glowacki, who's been in there at a much higher level. Glowacki, though, one thing about him, he's been inactive since 2019. That's a long time.
Yeah.
But when he is at his best and he's on the inside, the interesting thing about him, he'll turn off the shoulder, show the shoulder down the center line, and keep one hand free, and he'll lean back. He'll lean off of he'll have his lead foot quite far out and lean back. So it's almost like a shield that he's creating. So he lures you in. And when you come into his wheelhouse, that's when he'll launch himself forward and attack. And what he does, he's so rough and tumble with sort of low. He loves this little shovel uppercut, shovel hook to the body, and then a hand over the top of that. And because of that, he creates chaos on the inside, and he can affect his opponent's balance. So it'll be interesting to see Okolie, who's quality on the inside, against Glowacki on the inside, who can cause chaos on the inside. It will be interesting to see if Glowacki can get inside constantly, but trying to get inside, I think his method of doing that's going to be to try and lure Lawrence in by leaning back, because he's so good, Okolie, at keeping guys away and then tying them up, that he's a nightmare to overcome. I fancy Okolie to win the fight, but you know, I wouldn't be stunned if we start to realize quite early that on the inside, if he's not getting it his own way, he could face some trouble. But it's a very fascinating fight. It's one that I'm really interested in from a tactical perspective, even though I get a lot of people will say it's not an exciting fight.
Yeah, it is going to be an interesting tactical fight, because I think a lot of being made of like Lawrence Okolie's record going into this. Like, you know, it is a big step up when you look at Lawrence Okolie's record. I mean, who is the best win on Okolie's record? Is it still Chamberlain? What would you say?
Chamberlain or Matty Askin, really? They're the only two. So
it is, even though Glowacki is, you know, he's debatable at what kind of, he's a world-class operator. You know, he's fought Usyk. Who was his last defeat against? Was it Maris Bradis? Was it? Yeah. So he you know, he's fought top tier fighters. So Dapo, I'll go to you. Just how difficult is it going to be for Okolie, with, you know, without the experience at this top level, to go head to head with someone so experienced?
Yeah, these kind of fights, especially when you're rooting for the guy that's less experienced, they're quite scary, because you can go into these fights and the unexpected can happen. And as a British fan, as a British person supporting a British guy, we need to end this curse. And Okolie needs to bring it home for us, because
What's the curse?
We've been getting flogged by Mexicans for too long now.
He's not Mexican, he's Polish.
Polish, but still British. We took one dub. We need a dub. We need a dub. We need a dub.
I think he's saying we're on bad form.
Right, okay. Even though Mexico's over here, Poland is right.
We do tend to step out on the world stage and get flogged for some reason.
Yeah, but do we in our backyard? I don't think so.
Well, going back to what you said, I do think it's a possible risk for Okolie, that experience factor. But I think he's been trained. He's got a good trainer, and I think going into this fight, he's got all the attributes to bring them through. Okolie's taller. He's very rangy. He's good at range. Glowacki, I went back to watch his fights with Usyk, and although he lost those fights with Usyk and I can't remember the other fighter's name, they were quite competitive. So he's a world-class operator. He knows what he's doing in there. So I think we will see moments of that experience coming from Glowacki. But I think this is the fight. This is the fight that is going to bring Okolie to that mainstream stage. This is his transcendent fight, especially in the cruiserweight. So yeah, I'm really excited for this fight. I think he should pass this test, but he's not in there with. I think it's a lot closer than people think as well, because I know Okolie's a big favorite, and I do think he's got a challenge in front of him. But yeah, I'm really excited.
One thing that I want to just catch on from is everyone that's been around Okolie says about how hard he hits and essentially how strong he is and how awkward he is. So as much as he kind of presents this problem in front of most of his fighters, because he's so unorthodox in that regards, that you're gonna get someone's gonna tie you up and it's gonna make the fight ugly. What's his plan B when like Chris said, the other guy gets in the inside now and starts negating those issues where he's excellent in the inside and starts causing those problems where Okolie can't tie him up and he's forced to fight. I want to see if Okolie has the skill to then operate on a different wavelength where he then starts, fighting at range and keeping his guy at range and so forth, and whether he has the feet and legs to do so to get through the fight. That's what kind of intrigues me. I want to see what kind of levels does Okolie have, because to now we don't really know. We've seen him fight really good in spots, and we've seen him fight really ugly in spots, if you get what I'm saying. But I want to see how does this all kind of formulate on a world stage against a good fighter.
I guess that's where the experience risk comes as well, because
exactly,
we haven't, some of those things we haven't seen from him, and is he going to be comfortable doing it, having that plan B, plan C, or how is it going to look?
Yeah,
Samson does make a good point in the sense, though, that what he's ultimately saying is that if he's out of his comfort zone, are we going to see him go to the next levels that we didn't know he had, or are we going to see him crumble under pressure? Because up to now, he's always had it his own way.
Yeah.
So if things start to get very difficult, how does he cope? Personally, I think he's going to pass the test. But again, I'm speculating based on the things I've seen, and I'm trying to analyze his skill set, and I believe he can do it. But again, you're right. He's going up against the guy who's been in there at elite level. He has been very inactive, though, Glowacki. And even on the inside, Okolie is so good. I'm not saying Glowacki is going to win the fight on the inside. I think Okolie might. But I'm saying if he doesn't, it then becomes an interesting thing. Has he got the ability to, if he can't control and manipulate his opponent's body positioning, has he then got the ability to get on the back foot and keep a guy who's experienced at range? I think he does. But Samson's right in the sense that there's a lot we don't know still. And I agree that this is going to be a coming out fight, a fight where he's going to transcend the sort of more domestic level and make a name for himself. I think where it will become a lot more interesting is when he then goes to heavyweight, because there's all this talk now of him going to heavyweight.
Yeah.
At heavyweight, will he still have that ability on the inside to have that superior strength? Because if not, you better then have learned how to fight differently. Do you see what I'm saying? So,
Is there any matchmaking concerns here that, potentially this is too big a jump, too early for
Recently,
Okolie,
Eddie's
or
been
are
doing
we
that.
happy with it?
Recently, Eddie's been doing that. He's been throwing guys in with people that you start looking back and think, ooh, should you have done that? Is that really was that too early?
But it's sometimes it's easy to say that in hindsight, right?
Yeah,
When they lose.
When they lose, it's easy to say that. That's why I'm asking now,
And I think it's the right time for him.
You know what I like here? When do you see Okolie winning and getting an opportunity for a world title against any other person in that landscape that would have been, I'll say, the softer of touches?
It's a good opportunity. Yeah, you're right. He's not as good. He's not as good as some of the other cruiserweights in there. And additionally to that, I've got to be honest. For me, say let's talk about Warrington and Lara for a second. With Lara, he's still a young man who was physically strong, could punch. And you're looking at some of his defeats earlier in his career. It's a risk with an unknown guy who can punch, who's young. Because when they're young, they're constantly improving, right?
Yeah.
So I get what you're saying, Lewis, about in hindsight, people are looking at that. But even prior to that, I would have looked at that and thought, this is a big risk to take for a tune-up fight. Whereas just because there's so many unknowns.
High risk, low reward as well.
Right. And if you're looking at his style where he likes to punch with an opponent, Josh Warrington's not that guy. Josh Warrington likes to overwhelm an opponent.
Volume.
And so stylistically, I never liked that fight. Whereas this one, if he loses, it's not because of the matchmaking. It's just because for whatever reason he came up short. Whereas I think the time's right now. I think he will win this fight. I'm leaning towards him. I can envisage him a way in which he loses too, but I can see him doing it. If he doesn't do it, I'm not going to hold it against the matchmakers. We're going to have to look at how he lost, why he lost, try and analyze it. And it goes back to the drawing board. We've got to stop this thing as well, whereby if a fighter gets an L, Floyd Mayweather's messed up people's minds when it comes
massively.
to we say it often.
We say it
often on here. Mayweather killing my people. That's what we say that a lot on this podcast, man.
Yeah,
you're right.
He gets an L. What, you're just gonna? All right, he lost. He lost against a world-class fighter. He's had 15 fights. We go again. You know what I mean? It's like I don't know, man.
We won't even have some of the best fights today if they didn't lose.
Sorry, say that again.
We need losses in boxing. We won't have some of the best fighters ever if they didn't lose.
But it's ruined boxing at the same time because the people's unbeaten records are making each other like scared to fight each other.
That's what belts nowadays.
Yeah. Canelo Alvarez now knocks out the Canelo that lost to Floyd. He knocks him out.
100%.
But he never would have been this guy today if he didn't lose the way he lost to Floyd. Do you see what I'm saying? So you grow from your defeats, man. You've got to grow from your defeats. And listen, I'm not saying obviously he doesn't want to lose the fight. Don't get me wrong. But I'm saying if it was to happen,
it's not the end of the world.
You're not going to write him off. You know what I'm saying? So
there's something that I touched on a couple of weeks back here when I was talking, which you guys wasn't too happy when I was talking about with AJ. I think for a lot of boxers, that the eye test for me is the mental fortitude. If I can see that you have the ability to kind of withstand what's in front of you and then overcome that obstacle, I look at that person and say, that person's got, regardless of his skill set, he's got that something that can carry him all the way. For me, with Okolie now tomorrow, I need to see that he has that and that goes with every fighter. Like for example, when AJ went down against Ruiz, and when I was questioning the way he went down and kind of didn't really want to get up or seemed not too happy to continue, I was like, that mental fortitude test wasn't passed for me.
That your agenda is so smelly, Samson, man. It's so smelly, man.
But I'm just giving my honest opinion, objectively. Do you get what I'm saying? So for me, if Okolie can pass that, then I can say, yeah, he definitely has, regardless of his skill set, he has the ability to dig deep, regardless. So I know that regardless, you belong with the other people because you have, coupled with your skill, you have the right mentality to get through it. There's a reason why I actually touched on it, but I've actually lost it now.
AJ.
Yeah, let's get some predictions then before we move on to the next topic. Chris, I'll start with you. I'll put you on the spot.
Okay, if we're going to be specific,
So let me quickly brief you on what we normally do. So we actually have a boxing prediction league between ourselves and the cast members. So I'm second, and these two are at the bottom, but they joined.
We started.
We just joined, man.
We started late. We joined. We joined at week 30 of week 36 of the Premiership.
It wasn't that bad. It was like the third week. Sorry.
How many of you are there?
To be fair, we've got a big boxing group chat. Not everyone is a cast member, but you know, we've got about 6 or 7 cast members. So
yeah. So can I just say, you didn't have to do them like that. You could have just said, yeah, he's 6th and 7th. You didn't have to come out.
Bottom of the cast members, but that's all right. You got time, guys. You got time. It's a big boxing calendar. Anyway, Chris, as I was saying, what we do is we pick a winner, then we pick obviously by what method, you know, by points or knockout, and then we choose a round grouping. So between like 1 and 3, between 1 and 3, 4 and 6, 7 and 9, and 10 and 12. So one of those 4 essentially. So up to you now.
Okay, I'm gonna go with Okolie by knockout between. Well, wait, I don't know, not by stoppage, or do I have to be specific?
No, you don't have to be specific.
Yeah,
only specific within the round groupings.
Okay, I'll go Okolie by stoppage. Rounds. See, I was going to say 9 or 10, but you've killed me with that grouping. So I'm going to have to go 7 to 9.
Okay, yeah, 7 to 9. All right. Okay, cool. Samson, what about you?
Same. That's literally last week. He doesn't go 7 to 9. KO.
Okay,
you're going to come off bottom. Don't worry, Samson. We've got this.
Wait, I'm there with you because I'm going to say the exact same thing.
Dapo needs the points, so they're all going to follow Chris.
Listen, I was going to say the exact same thing. I think late stoppage as well.
I'm going earlier. I think Okolie's going to get him out earlier. I think it's going to be a real landmark fight for Okolie, a real, you know, stamp in the ground. I reckon Glowacki could be out of there by round 4. So I'm going to be going between 4 and 6. As a stoppage. Yeah,
inactivity as well.
Exactly. Yeah, I worry about Glowacki's inactivity.
Is it due to COVID?
I don't know.
If he had COVID, boy, we have to change our. We have to change our predictions if he had COVID.
No. I mean, I'll be honest with you. In the majority of people, COVID is like, especially in the under 60s, it's less deadly than the flu. It's not really going to affect a world-class athlete. I wouldn't change my prediction, but one thing that might change my prediction, looking at him. I mean, I'm not going to change it now, but I'm saying one thing that would make me think twice, apart from the inactivity, is the fact that I don't know if you guys saw the open workout a couple of days ago. He looked really trim, and he did not look. I never remember Glowacki. He had a t-shirt on, so maybe I've misjudged, but I don't ever remember him looking that skinny. And because he's the sort of guy that wants to, you know, he's a rough and tumble guy on the inside. I'm wondering if he's looked at Okolie and thought, you know what, this guy likes to keep it at range. I've got to be faster on my feet to get in. So he's coming lighter. If he's done that, I think that's an error. I think Okolie on the inside will then bully him. And so that's one thing that, you know, but I still think Okolie's going to be a little bit cautious early on. His first big step up. Don't worry, boys. We got this. Don't worry. You're climbing to the bottom.
He's already making you guys change your mind, eh?
I'm gassed here because as much as Lewis has been getting on to me about this whole bottom of the league thing, it's going to age brilliantly for me.
Yeah, when you win it, eh?
Yeah.
Interesting. I'll clip this part. Let's move on to other week's news. So obviously we're getting closer, lads. We're getting closer. Yeah. Eddie Hearn let the cat out of the bag with maybe a bit prematurely. He's getting pelters from absolutely everywhere, you know, about this announcement. But it does seem like we're getting closer. At first I thought, I thought, oh, what's Tyson Fury up to, man? Is he getting cold feet? You know, because I'm very much pro AJ. I make no admissions of guilt for that. But you know, I just don't believe AJ doesn't want the fight. So if this fight was ever not going to get made, I'm putting all the blame on Fury. So that's my unobjective view of the day out of the way. So but yeah, it does seem good good news that, you know, this fight does seem to be creeping closer. I do think Eddie Hearn probably opened his trap a little bit too early, because if the fact that a venue hasn't been decided, that these are still massive things, especially in the COVID world, right? Like, these are huge things to decide. Chris, what's your general thoughts on this whole announcement? And, you know, does it feel like it is gonna be happening, or are you still keeping coy about it?
Well, personally, forget what we all want to see the fight, right? But if I was in Team Fury and I was some sort of advisor, I think it's a mistake that he's taking the fight without a tune-up. I think he would have been at the ring far too long. And I understand a lot of people are saying he was at the ring for ages and he lost 10 stone to fight Deontay Wilder. Yeah, but
he had tune-ups for that fight as well, didn't he? Before Deontay Wilder. He had tune-ups for Deontay Wilder as well, didn't he?
Yeah, but they were really poor level tune-ups, and he was still losing weight. So a lot of people were saying he weren't 100% ready. And if that's the case, he himself says it. Now, if that's true, there was a difference between the first Fury and the second Fury. Now, is that just because of tactics, or was he genuinely different physically? The point is, when you're up against, I don't buy any of this stuff where Fury fans are talking about it's going to be an easy fight, or AJ fans are talking about it's going to be an easy fight. This is the biggest fight of both fighters' careers. Yeah. And to me, to come in, and I've said this openly before, and I've been laughed at about this. I've said it openly, and I'll say it again. In my opinion, both of these guys are elite level heavyweights by any standard in any era. You could put them in any era, they're still going to be right up there. You put them in there with Ali, Frazier, Foreman, they're right there. They belong. They're top, regardless of who wins. They're so good at so many different things. You can't go in if you're not 100% ready. And so for me, it's potentially an error. Now, if they realize this, how do you get out of that? If he turns around and says openly and honestly, you know what, I'm not ready, it's going to be held against him, especially because he spent so much time saying, I could come off the street, being fat, drinking pints and battering AJ. What does he then say? Even from a PR, not just a PR perspective, from the perspective of a psychological thing, it gives AJ a boost. On the other hand, let's say, as Hatman suggested, he suggested a whole bunch of different scenarios, but one of the things he brought up, which I never thought of, is what happens if AJ, for whatever reason, is still feeling tentative, doesn't feel 100%. So they've done this knowing or hoping that it causes some sort of furore, that it gets Fury to back off, and it's an excuse in a way for Hearn to say, look at what happened. That one I'm not so sure about. I don't agree with that one.
I don't buy that one.
They're gonna, yeah, that's right on Netflix's conspiracy theories. That one. I'm not too sure. But you know what? Stranger things have happened in boxing, right? So
listen, Machiavellian things happen in the sport all the time.
If that was the case, that's very smart. I'll be honest.
I did say, I said it last week. I said last week, regardless of what's happening, I don't think the fight happens personally, and I think Eddie's playing a blinder where he's kind of ensuring that they come off this unscathed, where it all falls down as Fury didn't want to fight, regardless of whether AJ is ready or whatever. I don't think it happens for many different reasons, such as the fact that we're in the COVID times and we're not going to maximize your profits and so forth. Both fighters will just come off long layoffs and so forth. It just doesn't feel right for it to be in June that they're shouting for. So,
and the idea is to have 2 fights this year, right?
Pardon?
The idea is to have 2 fights this year, right?
Yeah, but even still, no one wants to lose the first one.
Yeah, listen, listen, when they're legacy fights, you can't just say, oh, yeah, never mind if I lose the first one. That's the truth. That's the truth. And listen, let me put it to you another way, right? Let's say Fury did come out and say, you know what, I need to fight first. And in June, say, or May, let's say in May, he has a tune-up fight. They make the first fight in October, November, and then the second fight, the rematch, is a big stadium fight at Wembley, for argument's sake. That's not a bad thing, but people have become so excited now that it's been announced that people will turn against Tyson Fury if that happens. Yeah. So Samson's right in the sense that maybe they've gone down this route as a sort of Machiavellian sort of thing, but I don't know. I'd still find it surprising. I think they're very, very close, and maybe Fury's having second thoughts based on the fact that he's thinking, I do need a tune-up fight, and I don't know how to go about saying it, you know?
So why do you think? So why do you think that Fury is having second thoughts then? What's the logic behind that?
My logic behind it is the fact that it seems to me that I can't see where Anthony Joshua would want to go from here without having Tyson Fury, and then to announce the fight. Up to now, they may have continued to say things like Fury doesn't want the fight, we're having trouble with him signing, blah, blah, blah. But to come out and say it's all done, and for Top Rank to back that, it makes me wonder, why would Top Rank say that? Because Frank Warren weren't too pleased, but why did Bob Arum come out and say, we're very close to it being done? In fact, he announced it after, according to Hearn, he announced it when he told Hearn not to say anything. So, I don't know. I could have understood if it was just Team AJ and then Team Fury was saying, I don't know what he's on about. But for some members of Team Fury to have said it's happening, I don't know. It could just be, listen, it could just be a power control thing whereby, I think, you know, I want to announce it first. There's one other potential here, which got me thinking the other day. They're talking about the venue, right? Now, I don't know how true this is, but I read a rumor that there are multiple venues being suggested, and one of them is Shanghai. Now, if that's the case, this got me thinking a little bit, right? Not looking to get political or anything, but China has had a lot of, let's say, human rights violations. And one of the things they've done is when it was the whole COVID thing, you were having a lot of Black Africans that were being attacked in the streets and being banned from shopping centers and malls because they were being accused of spreading COVID. And you can see these videos all over Twitter.
Yeah.
You've also had the Uyghur Muslims and what's happened to them. They've been bulldozing churches and banning the Bible. Now, when you look at those three groups that are being persecuted, Black Africans, Christians, and Muslims, well, AJ's very proud of his African heritage. Tyson Fury's always spoken about ethnic minorities and how important they are to him. And he's a Christian. Anthony Joshua's been photographed in a mosque before praying. It looks like they both care quite a lot about these three groups. Have we seen a situation where the promoters have said, listen, this is the opportunity. If you want to make the 200 million, this is where we make it. And maybe the PR teams behind the fighters have said, hold on a minute. You do realize this, and this is happening over there. So maybe we shouldn't hold it there. Saudi Arabia, AJ's had links there. So maybe Fury will be thinking, I don't know, man. I don't know about the judging. That would be too pro AJ. Fury's fought in America. So AJ might be thinking he's fought in America his last 3 fights or whatever. And with Top Rank there, Team AJ might be thinking, you know what? I don't want to really go over there. That might be too pro Fury for the judging. So now where do we hold it? You know, the three places
or somewhere like that, or San Marino, or somewhere. Who knows?
You're not getting a big crowd over there. No. So then it goes back to what you were saying before about, you know, we're in COVID. Are we really going to maximize the level of the gate receipts and stuff? So maybe it's something to do with money, and everyone's looking into it. Who's avoiding who? When in reality, it's strictly about what venue do we hold this fight?
Yeah. Listen, Tyson Fury fought Braun Strowman in Saudi. He'll be all right.
Let's be honest. Let's be honest. Yeah.
Take away.
He fought Braun Strowman in WWE. He'll be all right, man.
take away the pandemic. Yeah. There's only one place this fight happens. It's in Wembley, 90,000. It's the only place it happens. Yeah. And they know in the back of their mind, COVID is coming to an end. If we just slightly delay this, why are we only going to do one fight if we have one fight in June and then push the Wembley out to the second time around? Well, we could do both in Wembley. It just makes more sense to me.
I think
get a tune up.
You know, Eli Sekbak, he put out a poll, and I was stunned at this. I couldn't believe it. And he had 90,000 votes. So it's a pretty big poll. Now, Eli Sekbak's main fan group is from the US, right?
Yeah.
He asked, what fight are you most looking forward to this year? And Terence Crawford against Errol Spence was there. And I thought that might push it. Tyson Fury, AJ. Tyson Fury, AJ was third. The most popular fight was Gervonta Davis against Ryan Garcia. And that made me think, right, in the United States, maybe this fight really isn't as big as people anticipate. In which case, you're right. Why would you not hold it at Wembley? And if that means you delay, you know, sometimes by delaying too much, it can lose its flavor. But because they're still both near their prime, you can get a situation whereby it's marinating even more. The danger though with this is that the WBO and Usyk didn't want to play ball. And if this fight doesn't happen now, next, Usyk becomes mandatory again. And nobody can tell me that AJ is definitely beating Alexander Usyk. It's too much of a risk. So they're going to risk all that 200 million potentially for that. I don't think that will happen. So if I had to get pushed, I think it's happening next. I just think they're deciding on what venue, but we'll see. I don't know.
I think Stephen A. Sorry?
It's a big fight. There's going to be so much going into this. It's a massive fight.
Stephen A. Smith said similar as well, didn't he? He said
he wanted Crawford Spence first.
Crawford Spence is a bigger fight than Fury Joshua. So maybe it is the American perspective, you know. I don't know. Maybe it's a big British fight. It should be a big global fight though. This
it is different level in it. The heavyweight. It's an undisputed heavyweight championship. We don't get this every. If one of them was American, they would not be saying that. So
that's what I think. Yeah, America can be a bit proud sometimes, and they're both British fights.
A bit.
So, Wilder's name's not in this, they don't care. Like, well,
exactly. But it's true though. But then I just think in general though, boxing, heavyweight boxing, I don't even think they warm to Wilder too much. Really, like Wilder struggled to sell in his own backyard. Like I don't know. Maybe there's a culture change in America towards heavyweight boxing.
I don't know. I agree with Eddie Hearn when he talks about you have to look at promoters involved in that scenario. Listen, say what you want about Deontay Wilder. He's brash, he's loud, he talks a lot, and he knocks people out clean. If you can't make that into a star in the United States, then the problem with you as the promoter, not the fighter. What do you want him to do? He's controversial. He's got everything that a fighter has where he should be in the news. Do you see what I'm saying? So what's going on there? So I'm not so sure it's a culture thing. I just think it's all to do with them not promoting him well enough. I've got to be honest. He should have been on Letterman or whatever other shows they have over there. Yeah. Do you see what I'm saying? Like they've done with AJ and Fury here on the radio, on TV shows. Why wasn't that happening with Wilder? So I think they've got to look at themselves a little bit in the way they've promoted and built him up. I've got to be honest. That's my perspective on it.
Yeah, I think obviously Eddie with DAZN has kind of noticed that gap in the market there, right? And he's coming for blood. He's coming to really shake things up. And I think, you know, Samson's not going to like me saying this because he knows I'm a massive Eddie apologist. But, you know, I think Eddie going over there and making waves is only good for the sport. Like Canelo, he came out the other day and just said, you know, he was shocked by, you know, how Eddie put on such a great show. He was like, I think he said something to like Eddie, oh, no one's ever done an intro like that for me before. And we're talking about Canelo Alvarez, like the biggest star in boxing. And
you know, I personally have always believed, and I still believe it, right? We're going to go back to wrestling. I actually think boxing could learn so much from wrestling when it comes to promos, to entrances. I think, and even the manufactured beefs, WWE or WWF, as it was when I used to watch it, showing my age now. They've been so good at doing these sorts of things. And when you see Canelo come down to the fireworks and, you know, and entry music and stuff, it is very much about the pageantry. And, you know, they've been very good at doing that. But for me, I think it goes a little bit beyond that as well. It's not, and I'm not talking about just Eddie Hearn. I'm talking about generally. It's this idea of how you get somebody in the public eye. I mean, do you remember when John Fury was supposed to fight Mick Theo? Mick Theo's like a Londoner who was known, you know, in the underworld as being a bit of a tough guy, a former doorman. He's a trained fighter, but not a professional fighter. Yeah. And it captured the imagination among hardcore boxing fans. These are people that might not have seen John Fury or Mick Theo ever fight. But what they've done is they've bought into the characters. And it's the same when you're talking about bringing back fighters of the past. Tyson against Roy Jones. There's now talk of, what if we see a third Evander Holyfield Mike Tyson fight? Well, you know they're not going to be the fighters they used to be, but it's the character. You build up these characters. It's a storyline. And that's where I think they failed with Deontay Wilder. So it's not just the entrance. That's brilliant, the pageantry. But that's on the night of the fight. You have to have bought the pay-per-view to see them. The problem is getting people to buy that pay-per-view. And for me, it's about making that guy a household name, whether he's a good guy or a villain. Floyd was unbelievable. Perfect. He was the best at making himself hated. Floyd's done some good things in his life, man.
HBO 24/7.
Yeah, exactly.
He was completely behind that.
No, but I mean, even away from the sport. So an early opponent of his that died, Floyd went and paid for his funeral because the family were poor. Floyd himself wouldn't have wanted that promoted when he was at the top of his game because he doesn't want you to like him. He wants you to think, look at this fool in a time of a financial crisis. He's sitting there, he's burning money. He wants to be disliked
because so much people pay to see him get knocked out.
Exactly. So whatever the case, you've got to get in the heads and live in the heads rent-free, so to speak, of the fans. Whether that means you're loved or hated, you've got to be spoken about. And that's what they failed to do, in my opinion, with Deontay Wilder.
Agreed.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think there's definitely an issue there. I'm just going back to this AJ Fury fight. I don't want to get too much into like I might get a prediction from Chris at the end, simply because we're probably going to preview it a lot closer to the fight. But I'll get a prediction now from Chris anyway, and hopefully we can have you back on again soon, closer to the fight. Just a few things. Who do you guys think will come out first in the ring walk?
Fury will come out first without
and who is the A and B side of this fight? I know it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, but I think it's quite an interesting debate actually, as to who people think is the A side or who's the B side.
I think both fighters subconsciously are in a battle of who wants to be the underdog. I think they both really want to be the underdog in this fight.
They both want to be the underdog.
Yeah, I think Tyson Fury wants to be the underdog in this fight. Yeah, 100%. Because
I can imagine Tyson Fury wants him to be the underdog, but I don't really see it with AJ. I don't think AJ's phased by that kind of thing.
AJ is saying, I would love to come out first. If I could choose to come out first in every fight, I would come out first. I think he after that Ruiz 2 fight, I think he really registers that underdog mentality now because he's had it. He's had it where everyone doesn't believe in him anymore, writing him off. And I think that's given him some sort of a new sense of motivation now. So going to this Fury fight, and I think it was David Hay that said this. This is probably the most dangerous time for Fury to fight AJ right now because a lot of people are saying Fury wins this fight. Some people are saying round 3 knockout, and with how
people are saying Fury's gonna knock AJ out in the 3rd round.
Yeah.
I mean, I would bet a lot of money on that not happening.
That sounds like a casual opinion.
Yeah.
Listen, did I not put that interview in the group chat today about that boxer saying that Fury does it in 4 rounds? That heavyweight boxer. I'm telling you. People are saying this. I don't agree with it.
A lot of people are just talking for the sake of talking.
But people are saying stuff like that. And it's out there, and there's a clear favourite. And I don't think AJ minds. I think they're both in a way want to be the underdogs. Fury saying, I'm going to be inactive, and I'm still going to go in there and beat him. But in his head, he's telling himself that even though he's putting himself at a disadvantage, he's still, going to do the job. So I think they both want to be an underdog in this situation because I think they've seen the advantages it gives you from a mental perspective. Because a fight this big, there's so much at play here. It's not even just like the physicality of both fighters. The mental stuff in this fight is going to be insane. There's a lot of stuff that I see that Fury has done in the past that has beaten fighters before he even gets to the ring with him, but that won't work on AJ. And there's a lot of stuff that I see that
you hope it won't.
I don't think it's gonna work. I hope so, but there's a lot of stuff that I just don't think. I think AJ is such a dry guy that a lot of stuff just doesn't work with him, in my opinion. But I just think they both want to be the underdog, and I don't know. I can't imagine there's going to be too many arguments of who comes out first. Do you know what I mean? Maybe an ego thing from Fury's side. Maybe
you see, to me, Fury's the type of guy to me, right? If he knows you want something, he is going to try his darn, even if he doesn't care, he's going to try his darndest to be like, no, you're not having that. I want that.
Okay, let me switch it back to you then. What does Fury have to say that he's the A side?
I don't know. I'll leave that to Chris.
Okay.
So with me, I'll be honest with you, when it comes to this, if you're talking about A side as in the reputation globally and stuff, I think you've got to go as a product, you've got to go Anthony Joshua. If you're talking about sheer money being generated and stuff like that, you've got to go AJ. I think a lot of boxing fans, though, especially in the US, will feel that the biggest, although AJ's CV is deeper, the biggest wins they'll feel belong to Fury.
Yeah.
So it depends. I think there's a split often between the hardcore and the general sports fans. Now, when it comes to money, it's more the general sports fans rather than the hardcore fans. So from a sheer perspective of business, I believe Anthony Joshua is the A side. When it comes to the ring walk, one thing I'll say is this: it shouldn't matter, but there is one element that's quite key. All right, the length of the intro. If let's say Tyson Fury comes out and it takes AJ 10 minutes to make his way to the ring, you're in that ring for 10 minutes.
Yeah,
Getting cold.
Getting cold. These things play a role.
AJ spoke about this before, right? Hasn't he spoke about this?
No, he said that he does this as well. Oh, every AJ fight I've watched, he takes so long to come out of the ring.
Yeah.
Well, I know that Vladimir Klitschko used to do it as a tactic, but I've never heard of anything about AJ, but it doesn't surprise me because listen, whatever you say, man, they've got top boxing people around them. They would have been told this is a good thing to do. Especially if it's outdoor, like you're saying, you literally get cold.
Even just recently, AJ took long to come out for Sapula. He was doing all this talking on the screen and stuff. It took time to walk in.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it can play a role in that scenario, you know. So I don't know. It depends, you know, what they both feel about it tactically.
Maybe that explains why Yildirim put up such a bad display against Canelo, because Canelo took about 20 minutes to come out, marching band and everything like that. Maybe that's the reason.
Nah, that's a very interesting point. Actually,
you remember when Hay was going to fight Bellew, and Bellew came out to the ring first. Bellew kept warm by dancing to Hay's entrance music. Maybe whoever's out first has got to just do a bit of that. But you know, all these little things. Sometimes what they'll do is they'll say, "Okay, I'll tell you what. Let's make a deal. Your name will be first on the poster, but I'll get announced first, or I'll come." You know, stuff like that happens. I'm sure they're going to find a solution. That's not going to stop the fight happening. These are just little things whereby, you know, sometimes people pay for it too. That's okay. Give me an extra 0.3% of the purse or something stupid. It's just, I can't imagine.
Even stuff like changing rooms matter with like if people want the bigger changing room, or because you know, in places like somewhere like Wembley, no, maybe not Wembley Stadium, but if it's somewhere like if you're doing a fight at a football ground, the home changing room, generally speaking, will be bigger and better than the away changing room. So someone has to have the home and someone has to have the away. So even stuff like that, they play into. I don't know if it's like a mentality thing. Like maybe if you're taking a smaller
fight is signed, there's a mental war going on. And
it's already started.
Before that ring is, before you get to the actual ring, they start ticking off what they think they've won, and that actually exactly. And I think there probably is a bit of a tallying up process going on for all of these little individual battles, and I think that probably is down to the fighters to, you know, when it comes to ring time. And when it comes to fight time, they need to maybe get that out of their head, you know, if they feel like particularly hard done by or whatnot. But you heard some stuff Fury does. Fury has, I remember I've heard him talk about being in the sauna with Klitschko. And he stayed there for like 2 hours, just he want to get out first. And once he stepped out, it's like, yeah, I've won. He won the fight.
Yeah, but you know what? Thing to do.
Yeah, but you know what though? When he confronted Klitschko about it, Klitschko could have easily have said, "Yeah, I got out of the thing before you." Yeah. So what? The fact that he denied it in a way suggests that it did affect him psychologically.
Yeah, it rattled him. Yeah,
it rattled him. So, but you know what? Of all the little things that you put into contracts, you know what the biggest deal is? The ring size.
Yeah.
The ring size plays a massive role, because obviously that affects what you can do tactically, technically, and there will be debate in the ring size as well. You know, it's not obviously going to be a massive Olympic-sized ring. AJ, I will assume, will want the ring as small as possible. Fury will want it as big as possible. These things play a role. You know, so...
That Saudi ring versus that Ruiz second fight, that ring was massive.
Yeah, but it was massive because AJ wanted to be the mover on that day.
Exactly, yeah.
He knew Ruiz couldn't cover the ground.
Yeah, I guarantee you, if AJ didn't want to be the mover, the ring would have been smaller. Yeah. And I do think, based on that perspective, in terms of influence, did you guys see that Maloney fight, that Aussie who fought in the US recently, and he blatantly got robbed?
What? Yeah.
Yeah, and Bob Arum went nuts. It makes me wonder the influence. I mean, would that have happened? You know how Canelo, we always talk about Canelo judging and stuff and Canelo scorecards. That wouldn't have happened to a Canelo. So it makes you wonder, is Top Rank losing their influence a little bit? You know, exactly. And if you think that maybe Eddie Hearn and DAZN Matchroom, you know, it's very powerful. You could argue he's becoming the most powerful promoter in the world. Whether you like him or not, whether that's what you want to see or not, we're talking about strict influence. In terms of influence, he's massive in the UK. He's developing Matchroom in Italy and Australia. So there's talk of it in Australia. It's already happened in Italy. So in Europe and possibly down under. And also now he's moved with DAZN into the United States. You're starting to see a global influence. Is that going to play a role in getting the little things that they want to get their way? You know, of all the things though, the two that matter is how long are you going to be in the ring for first, but more importantly than that, the ring size. They're the two that you really have to put your foot down with when it comes to negotiations. All the rest of it, who comes to the ring first, posters, like you're saying, Lewis, that's down to, you know, I'm just going to try and take this if I can take it, just for a psychological warfare. But yeah, those two things are the important things.
Yeah. It's like if you're going for a bad divorce, I guess you don't want your partner to have, you know, everything. You just be like, no, I want the toaster. I you know,
I want that pink robe.
I
want that. You know, I bought it. I should get it.
I want to get your guys' perspective on this, because this is a question I always ask myself. You see Tyson Fury and the second Deontay Wilder fight. I feel like Wilder and AJ are such different fighters, and you have to accommodate your fighting style to both fighters in a very different way. How do you think Tyson Fury, because it was such a drastic change in how he approached Wilder the second time as to how he normally fights, do you think he can successfully revert back to that herky-jerky fight on the back foot, move around the ring, as well as he has done in the past, knowing that he's been with Javon Sugar Hill now, learning more how to fight on the front foot, applying pressure, you know, trying to go back to that style with this new trainer? How successful is he going to be with that? Because I don't know, they're just...
It'd be absolutely fine.
Yeah,
Tyson Fury is a boxing guy. Like, he's been boxing his whole life. It's not the first time he's been a boxer puncher, in my opinion. He's done. He fights how he sees best. When I saw that mental fortitude, Tyson Fury is someone that has that mental fortitude. So he's got a plan A to Z. So in that regards, he's comfortable with if he has a southpaw in front of him, if there's an orthodox, if there's a tall person, there's a short person. If he has to use his feet, he has to stand his brand. He's fine. I don't think that's even a factor.
But also, if you go far back into the beginning of his career, Tyson Fury was actually a very aggressive heavyweight. He used to come for a lot of body punches. He only really became a boxer after he put it into practice against Kevin Johnson. He actually adapted after that first McDermott fight and stuff like that. So he can do multiple things, Fury. The only thing I will say, though, is as you age, you gain certain attributes, but you also lose some. And one of the things you lose are things like reflexes, foot speed, and so on and so forth. So if he's going to be a success going forward, he is going to have to adapt his game a little bit more. So if you were to ask me when was the best Tyson Fury, I would say it's probably the period of time when he fought Derek Chisora, Vladimir Klitschko, that period. So I do think he's a little bit past his best. He's still at top level. You know, it's not going to be a case of if AJ beats him, he fought a guy that was past his best. You know, if we're talking about a mountain, he's gone up and just slightly plateaued. I'm not saying he's on his way down. Whereas Anthony Joshua, I actually feel, I know a lot of people feel like he's been tentative, a bit wary and self-doubting after that Ruiz fight. But to me, he's added wrinkles to his game. So if you're talking about just capability, forget the mentality, because we don't really know what he's like mentally. But in terms of capability, AJ's the best he's ever been now, in my opinion.
I agree. So
what we're seeing is two guys at the top level, but one of them's relying on attributes that maybe are just starting to, I don't want to use the word decline because we've not seen it. We've not seen him slow yet. But he's getting to an age where he's going to have to start thinking about, how do I adapt my style? Does that mean he becomes like he was against Wilder permanently? I don't think for this fight, though, he's at that point in his age where he can't revert back to what he was doing before. I think he can. But going forward in the next 2-3 years, if he's going to stay around that long, he's going to have to start thinking about it. Sorry?
But the reason...
I think if he wins the first fight, well, we won't visit the second.
Oh, really?
The reason why I asked that as well is the weight thing, right? I think the older you get, it's a bit difficult when it comes to, especially fighting.
Tell me about it, man. I on the back of a car the other day, did a wheelie, man. I'm like, you know what I mean? I'm developing the best cleavage in boxing. I should be a ring girl. You know?
But obviously,
Ain't nobody
context-
paying pay-per-view for that, Chris.
The consensus for like all the boxing fans now is the tactic Fury needs to develop for this AJ fight is to go back to that Klitschko-esque style, you know, fighting the back foot, frustrate AJ, etc., etc. But he needs to be a bit lighter for that, no? And I just feel like, is he going to struggle with that weight to go lighter? Now he's what, 32, 33, Fury? I don't know. It's just things that I think about when it comes to this fight.
You're definitely right about the tactical question. I don't think he'll struggle to lose the weight and get back. I don't think he's putting that much weight where it affect him. But you're right about how does he approach this? If he comes in heavy, looking to be how he was against Wilder in the second fight, and let's say it doesn't go well, let's say he does that and he thinks, you know what, I'm going to walk AJ down, and it doesn't go well for him, and he's coming at that weight, can he then adapt in the middle of the ring and still move like he used to? If he comes in light and looks to move around the ring, and for whatever reason, he's thinking, you know what, Anthony Joshua's jab's actually better than I thought it was. I need to go away from becoming too fast, too fury, to becoming the Gypsy King and going to war. Now I've got to get all the way inside. Well, now are you heavy enough to do that? Mm-hmm. So he has got this tactical dilemma. Whereas with Anthony Joshua, I think it's more straightforward. Anthony Joshua's found his weight now. The way he was against Pulev is how I expect him to be in this fight. Do you see what I'm saying?
There's no reason for him to deviate from that at all, is there? Really?
No. So there are question marks, I believe, for Tyson Fury. One thing I'll say, though, about Fury, he has got an ability to get on the back foot and box, but then if it doesn't go well, like I said a second ago, you know he's got dog in him. He's done it many times.
Very adaptable.
And if he has to go to war, you know he goes to war.
Yeah,
whereas with Anthony Joshua, and I'm not saying this is not the case, but we're going back to what you were saying before about mental fortitude. I'm not saying he hasn't got that. I'm not saying he hasn't. But the one time things weren't going well for him,
he didn't want to be there.
Yeah, and that makes me wonder if it becomes a dirty war where he's on the inside Fury and he's throwing these wide hooks where they're coming around the back of the head and he's leaning on him and he's ripping that body. I expect Fury to do a lot of body work in this fight. If AJ starts to breathe heavily, gets cut, it becomes a war, and it's level after 9 rounds and you got, 10, 11, and 12 to go, who you betting on? It's one of those things where
I think for me, it's the opposition, it's the fighter, it's the person who's fighting. I think he didn't show us that because he was fighting Ruiz, someone that he didn't really give a toss about, in my opinion. When he fought Klitschko,
he's ready for it.
When he fought Klitschko, he knew that was his breakout fight. That was probably the most important fight at that point for him. And Klitschko dropped him. He was very tired. He said in the interview, the reason why he went down wasn't because of the power of the punch. It was because he had nothing left, literally in the tank, and he went down. But he still dug deep to come out of that situation.
He did, and he showed a proper warrior spirit in that fight. But let me ask you this one question though. Mm-hmm. Vladimir often spoke about why he took his foot off the gas when AJ looked tired, and he says, I think Vladimir was also very tired, but he says, and so did his brother Vitaly, that it was a plan so that they don't punch themselves out, to stay on the back foot, keep boxing, and then if the opportunity arises late, take him out late, otherwise win the fight on points. So he took his foot off the gas a little bit. Because AJ had already dropped him, and there was a point that he was ahead in the fight, regardless of how you scored the fight at the time of the stoppage, there was a point where he had a lot of success and he dropped Vlad. He might have been thinking to himself, you know what, I need a second win, and if I get that, I'll win the fight. Whereas with Ruiz, although he dropped Ruiz, within seconds he was down. So there wasn't a sustained period where he was thinking to himself, I'm superior here. So I'm wondering, if you're talking about the way the fight was going, Vlad AJ was a brilliant fight where it was swinging and roundabouts, but they were both there. Whereas with Ruiz, AJ started well, but then when it started to go badly, it went off a cliff. And I'm wondering if it starts to go very badly, if he's got that thing in him where he says, but it might be what you're saying. Mentally, if you're not switched on beforehand, it's hard to just find it.
Yeah.
Whereas he's up for this fight. So
there was a lot of rumors after the fight that, things weren't, his dad, obviously, we still don't know the full story.
Man. I'm sorry.
I know.
When it comes to fights here, and once you get in that ring, the excuses after don't wash. I'm sorry. I don't care if your shoulder fell out.
I don't know, man. I don't know if I believe that.
Like, I think it's all nice to come and say, I had a bad shoulder, or I wasn't well. I had surgery. My toe was broken.
But ultimately, those things do matter, right?
But prior to that, every single fighter says this is the best camp of my life. So
they
at what
would
point
say
in
that,
life,
though.
All right, Samson, let me ask you something, man. So let's say right now, we spoke about before, let's say the AJ Fury fight didn't happen, right? And because of that, Usyk was to step in. Fury might be thinking, I can't lose out on a £200 million fight. So although I'm not ready, I've got to take this fight. Now, in the build up to the fight, he's going to be saying, I'm ready, because it's psychological warfare.
Yeah.
If he then loses and turns around and says, you know what, I weren't sharp enough, fans are going to take the piss and say, oh, what an idiot with these excuses. It don't necessarily mean that he's lying, though. He might not really have been at his best.
I agree.
Well, the same thing happens with Anthony Joshua. He hasn't come out and given a reason. But you're right, Lewis. I didn't think of that, where what his dad said about, he was raging with Eddie Hearn. Maybe AJ wasn't ready. And he had to be ready for that second fight.
Or maybe that he wasn't well before that fight. Apparently he had surgery.
Maybe he was just fine, and they got their tactics wrong, and he came in too heavy, and he realized I shouldn't be punching.
And he was massive, man.
Yeah, I shouldn't be punching for a guy like Ruiz. I'm going to lose weight, get more mobile, and take him out that way. There's more than one way to skin a cat, right? So maybe that was his approach. The point is, sometimes there can be underlying issues, and if you speak about it, people make out like, oh, it's just an excuse.
Yeah,
they might really have been there.
You can't win, really. You can't win.
That's why, in my opinion, if you lose, don't come out with an excuse.
But AJ didn't, though.
Yeah, no, and I commend him for that, and I've rated him massively for that. But every time a fighter says any kind of negative thing about, Lomachenko came out and started talking about scans and all this stuff, which, shut up, mate. Shut up. Okay?
Yeah.
I don't care. I don't care.
I think that stuff should be illegal anyway, because wasn't there like a legal dispute a few years ago about Pacquiao? Was it what fight was it? The Pacquiao one where he came out afterwards and said he had like
Mayweather, yeah.
Was it Mayweather?
Yeah. He said he had an injury after Mayweather.
Yeah, but obviously we've had probably hundreds of millions of pounds on the betting market and all of these things. I don't think that stuff should be allowed. I don't know how you stop it.
But you know the problem is,
once you lose, just say you lost, and then in your whatever happened in the background, just say, let me get back at him, and that's it. And just, all you need to talk about is, I'm going to beat in a rematch. I don't want to hear anything else. Anything else doesn't wash me. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but you know what it is sometimes as well, when there's no guaranteed rematch, you've got to give a reason for people to believe that you could win the fight for them to demand the rematch. Look at what's happening now. One thing you've got to say about Lomachenko, he's lost one fight. He's easily the most decorated fighter in that lightweight division. And people are acting like he doesn't exist. Like the four kings are talking like he don't exist. And I'm saying,
I think there's good reason for that, though, isn't there?
He has been absolutely blacklisted, and you know what? I sympathize with him, and a little bit doesn't sympathize with him, because he wanted these guys to jump through massive hoops to get a fight with him. So on that side of things, I'm
not saying they should. I'm not saying someone should do this or someone should do that. That's a different story. All I'm saying is the reason he might come out with an excuse is because if he just says, listen, I lost to the better man on the night, but I'd love another shot, people have already blacklisted him now. Whereas if he's got some sort of excuse and his fans start shouting, oh, he was injured, it's like he's trying to add pressure.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So sometimes there's technical reasons, there's sort of tactical reasons behind saying
PR stuff.
PR stuff. Yeah. So
even the fight itself, there was spots where Tiffany was very, very uncomfortable.
And that's what I'm saying. Do what AJ did. You don't say nothing. Get your team to say.
Yeah.
Or get your dad to scream at Eddie Hearn in the ring.
You know what? In fairness, it's easier when you're the big cash cow in the sport, because you don't need to find excuses. If you're AJ, everyone wants to fight you because of the money anyway.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter whether you lose the title or not. You're getting that Ruiz rematch, regardless of whether it's in a contract or not. Like, they're not going to fight you. But I think when it comes to not being a cash cow, even if you're the best fighter in the sport, even, it becomes different. Do you see what I'm saying? It's like people want to then avoid you. It becomes that risk versus reward factor. And often guys want to use that excuse just to say, actually, that wasn't me at my best. Believe me, trust me, I can do better.
Yeah. And
it's one of those things, I think.
Yeah, because let's face it, I know Loma is this amazing fighter, but he's not. When you fight Lomachenko, you aren't getting ridiculous money, right? Like, maybe it changes a bit now with, like, the status of the division and whatnot, but fighting Lomachenko still doesn't have huge rewards, like,
which goes back, by the way, to what we were talking about before, about how when we're talking about Wilder and promoting him and building a character, how you have to build a character. Because think about other fighters like Andre Ward. How was Andre Ward not a massive draw, and made loads of money in the United States. What a fighter. But because he didn't run his mouth and he's respectable and he's a good guy, he's a family man, and he's not in the newspapers for like controversy, it was easy for the press to avoid him and ignore him. Whereas they put overrated guys who like to talk shit, like Adrian Broner, they'd try and push him to become a superstar. You see what I'm trying to say? Yeah. And so you get the top level fighters. Another one today is Usyk. How is Usyk not one of the biggest paid fighters in the sport? So what happens is it's not about skill set, it's about the character that you create, that persona. How much does that the PR, how much does that persona sell?
I mean, look at one of the highest grossing UK fights of all time is Froch against Groves, right? Like the whole of the country brought into the characters, you know, and they're not fantastic fighters by any means, are they? You know,
I'm not gonna lie to you. I went to the second fight, and that's one of the best. That's like one of the top 3 fights I've ever been to.
Oh, you went. Oh, I'm envious that you actually went. Yeah,
I do think they were both quality fighters. You know, I do
think fair enough. I mean, yeah. I'm not saying they're average or anything like that. I'm just saying, like, for the money that they've earned a lot more money than fighters who were of better stature and more decorated and a higher skill level. Essentially, is my point. But and
that's the point. It's all about that character, building that persona.
Yeah. 100%. Before we wrap things up, Chris, I do want to get an early prediction from you. Sorry if this is putting you a bit on the spot, but
so I will say this, right? I can envisage ways in which both fighters win the fight without a shadow of a doubt. I genuinely believe it's up in the air. If you were to push me and I was to say, if they were both at their very, very best, who do I think wins the fight? I lean towards Tyson Fury. I can envisage more ways in which he wins than AJ does. Having said that, if I had to put a prediction, I believe AJ's probably going to win the first fight, and then I think Fury will win the next 2, because I think there'll be 2 more after that. I think Fury would win the rematch. I think he'd adjust. He'd come in sharper. I think he'd probably move. I think Sugar Hill, the style that he brings of Fury wanting to move forward, would be a mistake. I don't think Fury should walk down Anthony Joshua and fight at mid-range. There's got to be. AJ's a very good counter-puncher. There's the ways that Fury wins this fight, in my opinion, are either on the back foot and staying away from AJ, or getting all the way inside, so close that it becomes a dirty, hard, leaning, sloppy fight. In which case, I think Anthony Joshua's stamina might go, and he can wear him down in that way. They're the 2 ways in which a lot of body work. They're the 2 ways in which Fury wins. The ways in which AJ wins, in my opinion, is if it becomes a mid-range fight where he walks Fury down and Fury can't maintain range and they start consistently trading. And Anthony Joshua, from a technical perspective, I'm not talking about who's more skilled, but technical, whose punches are more technically correct, more orthodox, who throws the more correct hook, who throws the more correct uppercut, that's AJ. And I think in that scenario, if they start to exchange at a sort of mid-range, mid to long range, then it becomes AJ's fight. Sorry, mid to close range, then it becomes AJ's fight. And so I can envisage a way in which Tyson Fury is not 100% sharp. It gets taken into, an area. I wouldn't even be surprised if he thinks, whoa, AJ's jab early on is actually a lot better than I thought. All these people talking about me just outboxing him, that's not going to happen. And I can imagine AJ taking it to an area he doesn't want to go and ends up causing more damage and winning the fight. Whether it's points, a lot of people are writing off AJ winning points. I'm not. I think it's a very real possibility. But then in a rematch, I believe Fury would be the one who's more likely to adjust. But we'll see.
Yeah, I think that's it. Obviously, the interesting thing about this fight is, like you said, there's so many variations, and not just in terms of result, but in terms of styles they may fight. There's these two fighters are extremely versatile.
They're quality, man. They're quality.
Top quality, man.
You know what's funny? Yeah, you spoken about Fury going to AJ's body. If I was speaking to AJ, I almost feel like AJ should almost forget about Fury's head.
Honestly,
I swear, and take him to the body.
That Wallen fight.
Like, whoever wins the war of the body shots.
I always say this. Go back to watch Tyson Fury versus Otto Wallen. Before Otto Wallen cut Tyson Fury, he was going to his body. He was slowing him down. When he cut him, he started headhunting, thinking that I can make the cut bigger and then win of stoppage. That body is important, Tyson Fury's body, because his feet move very fast, but his body is very still. It's a big target.
Hitting Fury to the head itself is a massive.
It's long. It's long. You
Mm.
can't headhunt versus like Tyson Fury. I've always said that anyway. That's my opinion.
All right.
He has to go to the body.
Yeah, I agree. Chris, it was fantastic having you on, man. I really appreciate you coming on. We're big, as we said at the start, we're big fans of your content. Obviously, people can please go follow, subscribe to Chris Andre Boxing on YouTube. And what's your Twitter at, Chris? I know you got
at Bet Boxing. I used to do betting tips. And,
okay. What made you stop?
You want honest truth?
yeah, go on.
We were doing really well, actually. But,
Okay.
I wanted to be closer to God, man, and I felt like I was doing something that wasn't a great. I didn't want to be encouraging people to gamble, to be honest with you. So I moved away from that and just stuck to the technical
analysis.
But I've loved being on with you guys. Honestly, thank you so much. Hopefully, we can do it again one time.
Yeah, 100%.
Definitely.
Yeah, I hope you enjoy the fights this weekend as well.
Yeah, it's quite a lot. There was quite a lot we didn't even speak on that. Ortiz.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Yeah.
But it is 11:15 at night, and I am tired.
Yeah, this might have been parts. It's been so long. But, it's been enjoyable, boys. Thanks.
Guys, use the hashtag Ringside Fracas. Follow us on Ringside Fracas, and we'll be back next week with another episode. Take it easy, guys.
Take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.